Hi, my name is Gerald. I am 49 years old, and if you asked me even a year ago what I imagined my life would look like today, I would have said something about watching my youngest finish high school, planning for a quieter house, maybe taking up woodworking in the garage, and looking forward to growing old with my wife. I never would have pictured myself here, sitting alone at my desk, trying to untangle 2 decades of marriage and the mess that followed once I discovered the truth about her. Her name is Melissa. She is 45, and for more than half of my life I believed she was my partner in every sense of the word. We met when I was 28. I had just started making real progress in my career in construction management, and she was working part-time at a bookstore while finishing a degree in education. I remember the way she looked at me the first time we talked, like she actually saw me, like I wasn't just another guy fumbling through small talk. We stayed up until 3 in the morning at a diner the night we met, talking about everything from our childhoods to the books she loved. By the time the sun came up, I knew I wanted to see her again. We married 3 years later. Our wedding wasn't extravagant, but it was full of laughter, friends, and the sense that we were building something solid. I took pride in being the steady one responsible with money, willing to work long hours to provide. She always told me that was what she admired most, that she never had to doubt where she stood with me. I wore that like a badge of honor. For years, I thought we were the example of a strong marriage. Sure, we had arguments, sometimes even ugly ones, but we always circled back to each other. We raised 2 kids, built a home filled with memories, celebrated milestones both big and small. I never let myself imagine that one day I'd be questioning whether any of it was real. The first cracks appeared so faintly I almost ignored them. At first, it was the small things, her phone never leaving her side, even when she went to the bathroom. We had always had a pretty open policy when it came to our devices. If she wanted to use mine to look up a recipe, she would. If I needed hers to check an email, she handed it over without hesitation. But somewhere along the way, that changed. I would catch her angling the screen away from me, or she would suddenly silence a notification as soon as it buzzed. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe she was planning something for my birthday, or maybe she was just craving more privacy as our kids got older. Then came the late nights at school. Melissa worked as a high school teacher, and she told me she was staying later than usual to help with grading or after-school tutoring. At first, I didn't question it. She had always been dedicated to her students, and I admired that about her. But there were evenings when she would come home later than she said, her hair slightly out of place, or her clothes not quite as crisp as when she left in the morning. Still, I swallowed my doubts. I told myself I was paranoid, that after nearly 2 decades together, I owed her the benefit of the doubt. I think deep down I knew before I let myself admit it. There's a certain intuition that builds between 2 people over the years, and mine was screaming at me. I remember one evening I'd cooked dinner for the family because she said she'd be home by 6. 6 turned into 7, 7 turned into 8. By the time she walked through the door, the boys had already eaten, and I was sitting alone at the table with her plate waiting. She smiled apologetically, kissed me on the cheek, and said she got caught up with lesson planning. But something in her eyes gave her away. She avoided mine too quickly, too deliberately. The night I finally found proof was a random Tuesday. She had left her phone charging on the kitchen counter while she showered. It buzzed once, twice, and then lit up with a name I didn't recognize. I don't know what came over me, but my hand moved before I could stop it. I opened the message. It was short, nothing graphic, but intimate in a way no message from a colleague should be. Something like, "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but I just stood there staring at it until I heard the water shut off upstairs. I put the phone back exactly how she had left it, and for the next hour I sat in silence at the dining table, listening to her hum as she brushed her hair in the bathroom like nothing had happened. That was the moment my world split into the life I thought I had, and the reality I could no longer deny. I didn't confront her that night. I wish I could say I marched upstairs, shoved the phone in her hands, and demanded the truth, but instead I sat frozen. I felt like if I spoke too soon, if I misread anything, I might destroy my family with nothing but suspicion. So I played the part of the oblivious husband. I asked her about her day, kissed her goodnight, and lay awake for hours, listening to her breathe beside me while my mind replayed that single message again and again. The next morning, I decided I needed certainty. Maybe it was cowardice, maybe it was strategy, but I couldn't bring myself to accuse her without more. So I started watching. Nothing obvious, just subtle notes. When she said she'd stay late, it'd check her location on the family tracking app. Once, it showed her near a coffee shop across town instead of at the school. Another time, she claimed to be grading papers in her classroom, but her car wasn't in the school parking lot when I drove past on my way home from work. Each little inconsistency was like another crack in the foundation, widening and deepening until I could no longer pretend. After 2 weeks of this, I made the mistake of looking through her messages again. She had gotten careless, or maybe she thought I would never suspect. The thread was with a man named Eric. I didn't recognize the name at first, but after a bit of digging, I learned he was another teacher at her school, someone she had mentioned casually in conversation over the years. Nothing had ever sounded suspicious before, just a colleague, but the messages told a different story. They weren't graphic, but they were intimate, full of pet names, inside jokes, little comments about stolen moments at lunch or in empty classrooms. And there were enough references to our time together that I knew without question this wasn't just an emotional affair. I remember sitting in my car during my lunch break at work, scrolling through those texts, feeling like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. I thought about our kids, about the vacations we'd taken, about the nights we'd stayed up late laughing until our stomachs hurt. And now here I was, reading my wife call another man the things she once called me. I still didn't confront her right away. I don't know why. Part of me wanted to gather enough evidence so that if she tried to deny it, I could shut her down instantly. Another part of me, if I'm honest, wasn't ready to blow it all up. If I confronted her, I'd have to face the truth, and once that truth was out, there would be no putting the pieces back. For a few weeks, I lived a double life. To her, I was the same husband I'd always been, cooking dinner, paying bills, mowing the lawn. But inside, I was unraveling. Every smile she gave me felt rehearsed. Every touch felt counterfeit. Every I love you sounded like a lie. I would watch her laughing with our sons and wonder how she could hold this secret so casually, how she could look me in the eye knowing what she was doing behind my back. It was one of the most surreal and lonely periods of my life. The night I finally confronted her, I didn't plan it. I had imagined the scene 100 times in my head, rehearsed words, even pictured the exact expression she might wear. But when it finally happened, it was almost mundane in its timing. We were in the kitchen. She was rinsing dishes, humming softly, and I just broke. I said her name quietly at first. Melissa. My voice cracked enough that she turned immediately, a little frown on her face. I held her gaze and asked the question that had been burning through me for weeks. How long have you been seeing him? The way her face drained of color told me everything before she even opened her mouth. She froze, the dish still in her hand, and for a second, I thought she might try to play dumb. But she didn't. Her lips trembled, and then she whispered, "You know?" Those 2 words shattered something in me. Not because they were an admission, but because of the tone, like she was sad she had been caught, not that she had betrayed me. I felt my chest tighten, my hands shaking as I said, "Yes, I know, and I want you to tell me the truth. All of it." She put the plate down, dried her hands on a towel, and leaned against the counter. She couldn't look at me. She admitted it had been going on for almost a year. "It started as long talks after school," she said, "and then it just happened." I remember repeating her words back to her, "Just happened." Like it was some kind of accident, like she tripped and fell into his bed. She cried. She said she never meant to hurt me, that she still loved me, that she was confused. All the clicks you'd expect, every line I'd already read in those text messages. I didn't yell. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just stood there, feeling like my body was made of stone. I asked her if she loved him. She hesitated, which was its own answer. I asked if she was going to end it. She said she already had, or at least she claimed she had. By then, I didn't know what to believe anymore. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, as gut-wrenching as it was. The hardest part was looking at the woman I had built my entire life with and realizing I didn't know who she was anymore. The person I trusted more than anyone had chosen lies over honesty, and in that choice, she had rewritten every memory we shared. The weeks that followed were a blur of late-night talks, counseling sessions, and raw silences. She begged me to give her another chance. Part of me wanted to, if only for the kids. But every time she touched my hand, every time she said "I love you," I heard his name echoing behind her words. Eventually, I realized that staying together would only be a slow death for me, for our marriage, maybe even for her. So I told her I couldn't do it. We filed for divorce 6 months later. Now, at 49, am learning how to live alone again. The house is quieter than it's ever been. The boys split their time between us, and I do my best to keep their lives steady. Some days, I feel lighter without the constant suspicion, without the weight of her secret pressing down on me. Other days, the loneliness hits so hard I wonder if he'll ever really recover. But if there's one thing this has taught me, it's that silence is its own kind of betrayal. I stayed quiet too long, swallowed my doubts, and in doing so I let myself become a stranger in my own life. If anyone reading this has that same gut feeling I did, don't ignore it. You might not want the truth, but the truth will find you anyway. And when it does, you'll have to decide whether to let it break you, or to walk through the wreckage and build something new. I'm still figuring out which one I'm doing. Maybe both.